All right. So, this is our weekly hypnosis talks with me, Jasiah, and Pete. And today we decided we wanted to talk about, are memories real? So, last time Pete and I were talking, he was telling me that he's thinking maybe they're not so real. So, why don't you tell us why you're thinking that?
Yeah, and it's so it's a mixture of they're real, but they're real from our perception, not necessarily reality, right? And so it is one where they did a study on 9/11, right? They waited 20 years till after, and they asked people, "What do you remember?" Right? And there was this group of people um, who they go, "Oh, I remember the smoke coming into the window. I remember us coughing. I remember all these scary things, right?" And then they were like, "Well, according to all the reports and everything that happened that day, they were in Connecticut, far enough away where there was no smoke. They were in the opposite direction of the winds in general." and, and so why did they remember the smoke? Right? Why do they remember coughing? You know, and it's one where in the study they really talked about how our mind takes in so much information at once that when there's these little gaps, it has to try and put something there to make sense, right? And so they probably, were like, "Oh, I saw it on the television," and the mind just kind of goes, "Well, I was scared. I wouldn't be scared of a television. It had to be real. Like there had to be the smoke in the room, right?" And so when it comes to the work we do, when we work with memories, does it matter if they're real as far as factual real, or does it only matter because it's their perception of what was or is real? Yeah. And this is one I've learned for myself and a lot of my clients, that it doesn't matter. You know, you and it's not about creating like false memories or anything like that. Like that is something I don't believe we should ever do, right? To create false memories. But it's changing the perception of the memory that can be very important. Um, and it's one for me where changing the perception of the memory might happen before that memory even occurred to them, right? So one of my big techniques is going back to the womb and teaching, uh, us when we're one single cell, everything that's going to happen in our life, the good, the bad, the people that come in, the people that go out, the ones that help us, the ones that hurt us, right? How to see the world differently from the moment we're born. Yeah. And that is when I found my clients, when they really get into it, it not just changes that one moment, but it changes every moment, right? They're able to create this voice inside them that's kind of like, oh, the moment we're born, they go, well, that's a doctor. Oh, he's checking to make sure your lungs are breathing. Oh, he's cleaning you up because you're covered with all this gunk and junk, and and oh, this is your mom, this is your dad. Oh, we're crying because we're hungry. Oh, we're sleeping because we're growing and tired, right? And that's just like days 1 through 4. Right? Never mind when you go home, right? Never mind that all of a sudden there's just these bright lights and there's noises where you didn't hear noises before. And, you know, um, one of my mentors, Jerry Kine, used to talk about uh, it's why every one of us inherently have the fear of falling. Because when you think about coming into this world, you're in this nice, safe, comfortable, area, and then all of a sudden you're like thrown out into this loud, bright, noisy area where there's so many people talking and sounds, and the temperature change, and you know who wouldn't have a fear in that moment, you know and so like stuff like that, where it's like, if you can go back to when you're in the womb going, hey, look, like we're gonna come out of here, it's gonna feel scary, but we're gonna be okay, right? Then you go on beyond that, where it's like week 1, week 2, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, with this voice just teaching you, right? Oh, this is going to happen, right? You're going to fall off your bike. You're going to get a big scrape. You're going to be in a cast for the next 8 weeks. But you know what? You're going to be okay on the other side of it. Are you changing the memory of falling off your bike and breaking your arm? No. But are you changing how you perceive that memory? I believe so, right? And what allows us to begin to let go of those moments of stuckness, right? Of fear, of whether it's feeling unsafe or whatever, to go, no, as an adult, I know more. So I become wiser in those moments.
So I'm thinking like, okay, so we're not saying that the memory is different. We're saying that our perception of the memory is different. And simply by the perception of it, there's this element that makes the memory different based off of the feeling being
Yeah.
different around it. So that we have this capacity to, through another lens, understand that we survived this thing, or that fear or that something that was could be altered in a way to make our life now easier, less fearful, less traumatized in a certain way, without doing like a bypass, or like what's called a spiritual bypass sometimes, by just right bypassing it in whatever way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one where, like, when I think of like all our memories, right? It's amazing how you'll take, let's say, a concert, right? 20,000, 30,000 people. Some people will leave that going, man, that was the worst concert of my life. Other people leave going, holy cow, that was amazing. I can't believe when they did this. And they both saw the same concert, didn't they?
Right.
But they didn't. Right? It's why someone goes, well, based on my perception, based on what my experience is, this was a horrible one. And another person goes, based on my experiences, my perception, it was an amazing one. Well, was the concert good or bad?
Right.
Yeah. And I find that's what happens as we grow up, yeah, with our memories. But then the longer time we have in between them, the more there could be gaps, because I don't think our mind wants us to have incomplete memories, right? Incomplete perceptions. I think it needs, it wants, it desires them to be complete. And so it's kind of, I think of Jurassic Park, where they're creating the dinosaurs and like, well, we took a little bit of this from a frog and we took this from, a scuttlefish or whatever, right? Octopus, to make the dinosaur. Is I think our mind does the same thing, where it goes, oh, this is like this situation. Let's put that there. Oh, that's like this situation. Let's put that there. Right. To make it complete. But it's not perfect. But we get stuck in it because then it's just playing that little loop of that incomplete memory with these different things it was able to throw in there, maybe like Frankenstein's monster, right?
Right.
To where it can do stuff, whether good or bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was one where I was talking with one of my friends recently, where she was talking about trauma for her kids, right? She goes, I don't want my kids to have trauma growing up. She's like, I grew up with trauma, right? I don't want them to grow up with trauma. And I was like, well, you can't have them live in a bubble, right? Because that creates its own type of trauma, right? That's where you may get the extreme end of cleanliness, OCD, right? Because they're in that bubble. But if you let them go too far on the other end, well, now they go, well, no one cares about me. I get to do whatever I want. And that creates another kind of trauma, right? And so what's the answer? And for me, with my daughter and everything, it's just understanding that good things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen. What perceptions can I give her during the bad times that has her feeling safe still?
Right.
Yeah. because to me, trauma typically comes from a feeling of lack of safety, lack of knowing I'm going to be okay. You know, and then for me, I'm a believer I can't tell people what to feel, right? I don't think it's my job to be like, you should be feeling good right now, right? You should be happy. You are okay. I think it's so much more powerful when it's what do you see around you that signifies safety? You know, what do you
So, what if somebody has a memory where none of that is the case? So, someone has this traumatizing memory where, you know, there was nothing okay about it. Now, maybe in that there was one good thing. Maybe it was the teddy bear in the room, or maybe it was something. But what do you do, or what do you suggest for people who would like to move beyond some traumatizing things, and to have a better um, perception around something that was just very much unacceptable?
Yep. And this is one where definitely those things happen, right? Um, what I go to is a safe time before the event and then a safe time after the event, right? Because this is one where if we think of whether it be fears, phobias, trauma, right? What happens is we get stuck on a little tiny loop, right? We're not playing the big picture. We're not playing the full movie. It's one little part of a scene, right? And then what happens is we forget about everything else. And so when the mind can go, oh, we were safe before, right? Whether, let's say it's a child who's afraid of the dark, right? You can go, all right, so in your mind, you're safe before. What are you doing? Well, maybe they're sitting on the couch eating popcorn, watching a movie with the family, right? And then comes the moment of having to go to bed and it's dark, right? And they go, I can't see anything. And that's what's scary. You go, okay, what point after that do you know you're safe, right? For, I'd say in this situation, it's probably the morning, right? And you go, all right, so in the morning and you feel safe, how do you know you're safe? Well, I can see out the window, I can see the light, I'm getting up. It's, all these things that signify safety. You go, okay.
The boogeyman
So,
didn't get me.
yeah, the boogeyman didn't get me, right? I woke up, right? And so when you start going, okay, so let's go back to you watching the movie. Now we're going to go through that horrible scene of, oh, you're going to bed. Oh, I actually fall asleep pretty quickly. You awaken this morning. And they go, oh, man, that was kind of scary, but I know I'm okay, right? You run through that every time looking for things to make it better, to make it easier, right? And they say that the magic number for these is usually like 6 times, 7 times, but some people it could be 21 times, right? There's no unfortunate solid number, but just every time you do it, you just look for ways on why it feels better, right? And what you're doing is you're creating that full scene of that event. And then once the mind goes, yes, I am safe. I've done this hundreds of times now and I'm safe. It'll start feeling safe in all those other times. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is, in general, when someone has a trauma or something that's really painful, it loops just in that painful thing. And so
Yeah.
what we're doing is expanding the memory to safety, hardship, back to safety. So you're going from this small, acute, hard situation to expanding the memory of having safety on both sides, so that you know that you might go through that, but that before you were okay and after you were okay. And then you repeat that over and over. And so you're expanding that memory to have more than just this one pinpoint of
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You're expanding the perception, the awareness, the understanding of the whole situation.
Yeah.
Right.
I love
This
that.
this
That's great.
this is one where it to me it follows the universal law of relativity. Some people call it the law of cycling. Some people call it the law of ebb and flow. Where through our life there's going to be good times and bad times, right? We can't just be always flowing in good, right? And we always can't be flowing in bad. And with every event, there is some kind of good before and after. But in that moment, that's when we feel like we're drowning. we can't see the good on either side because we feel like we're drowning. And when the mind can begin to go, like just like a wave, it went up and went down. Oh, and we're back up. It's okay to no longer just stay in that low, drowning moment. Um, and yeah, it's to me, it's one of the most powerful things we can do with pretty much all our memories that we don't like. Uh, because if we really look at them, they were very temporary. Um, as far as they may have been repeated, but the moment itself probably took minutes or hours, right? Versus how we think of it in our mind as being eternal.
Okay. So that's another thing, is that often these memories become kind of eternalized or memorialized. And sometimes we even give a certain level of attention, or like high level, like I'm thinking, giving it a title, like giving it
Yeah.
this something that they can't quite think of that word, when maybe it doesn't need, maybe you've put it on a pedestal, or you've put it in a focus in a way that it doesn't deserve, or knowing at least that you have a choice to give it a different light, give it a different attention, put it on a different, maybe from up here to down here. Just because it's a memory that you remember, we have the capacity to change its significance, to
Yep.
change the light on it, to change the weight of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So like one of the first exercises I do with most of my clients is I call it cleaning house, right? For this very reason. Yeah. Whether sometimes I'll call it, we put it on a pedestal, right? Like we have such high value because we feel like we need it, right? Now, I always kind of joke about it as when we're kids, right? If we have an older brother, sister, whatever, and they were playing with something and they come up and they just take it away, right? And we get angry, right? Now, that anger in that moment is justified, right? But how many of us carry that anger for years, right? How many stories do we hear? We go, oh, 4 years ago, she did this, right? That's why I don't talk to her. That's why I don't, hang out with them, right? We're holding on to that anger. So if we put it on a shelf in our mind to go, I got to hold on to this. I can't throw it out, right? We do that enough times. Our mental house is just cluttered with boxes and boxes of stuff at one point that was useful that's no longer useful, right? And they begin to create our bad habits, our bad responses, and emotions, and limitations. Because if we think of our storage space can only hold so much, if we're filling it with all the anger and the frustration and the limitations and the sadness, there's no room for anything else, right? And so we have to begin to go in, start to look in those boxes and go, no, I don't need this anymore. Right. I'm going to put something better there. I'm going to make space for growth, for expansion, for whatever. Right. But if we don't do that, it's one where, I see it all the time where people are like, oh, yeah, like, when we were kids, right? I think a perfect example of my life. As a young child, my family went down to the Cape Cod in Massachusetts for a summer trip. And one day, I guess, I had to be 6 or 7, what people tell me. I was watching cartoons, right, sitting on the floor at the cottage. My brother came in, just kicked me in the back of the head and kept on walking. And for me personally, I don't remember, like I remember it happening, but like I don't remember anything. And the way my family describes it is that I kind of just fell over and I got back up and I just kept on watching TV, right? Now, how many of us would that have happened where you've gotten up and started just attacking, like, your brother out of anger, right? And then going, oh yeah, my whole life, I remember we were in that summer vacation home, and I remember he came over and for no reason he kicked me. I remember that. I'm holding on to that anger. That doesn't serve me now. It served me in that moment very usefully. But now, let's say we're talking, 32 years later, that doesn't hurt me anymore. It doesn't help me. And so when we're able just to take those moments and just throw them out, be like, I don't need to hold on to that. One, we physically feel lighter. We physically feel better and healthier. But we give, more importantly, that space for better things to grow in our mind, better perceptions, to change, I say, our future memories so they're not like our past memories.
Well, and I have to say too, when you say that, it's like just reminders, for people who feel like their life is static. It is what it is. What happened is how it is. It's like that is true, and there is a way that you can just switch it in a way that will serve you more. Just because it happened to you and you felt that way about it, there is a way to not dismiss it, but just give it a different focus that might give it some healing, or that might change the weight, or there's many, many various forms to talk about that perception of it, where then it can serve you, or you can say, you served me, and now there's space that I'm making on this shelf for something that will serve me more.
Yeah.
And so in that way, the memories that the kind of what we were talking about, like, are memories real? Maybe memories aren't real, would be, it's this kind of thing to contemplate, like, what kind of real do I want to live with this memory being?
Yeah.
Something like that, opposed to just this happened.
Yeah. And it's one, I love that, because, what kind of real do we want this memory to be? I think is a great question to ask ourselves, right? Because if I think about it, like, let's say I was 4 years old and a man or woman came towering over me. Now, they may only be 5 feet, right? But to me, being maybe 2 feet, 3 feet, that's going to look massive and huge, right? That's going to be really overpowering and scary to that me, right? But if I can go into that moment going, well, now with all this new information, this new knowledge I didn't have then, I actually see how tiny this person is compared to me. How much did that change how we feel about the situation? Because we are limited in our memories on what and who we are in that moment.
Right. And that it's like, again, that we don't want to dismiss what it was, but know that how we felt as a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old is completely valid. But do we want that 4 and 6-year-old emotion and mentality to dictate our 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old experienced life? It's like, well, maybe we want to adapt it to now. And part of it might be by parenting or nurturing that part so that it can then be free to kind of grow to where you are now and serve you in a way that will still be nurtured from that moment of that younger self, while also allowing it to kind of like unfreeze from that experience and grow with you through the experience, right? And
Right.
perhaps that memory, I'm just seeing in my eye, like, that there'd be a chance that that memory that was something, once it unfroze and was able to grow, that it might be something you couldn't even imagine that it would ever be.
Yeah. Right. It's one where I'll think of a client a little while ago. Growing up, his dad was a severe gambler, right? It was one where his dad would take his paycheck and he would be like, "Hey guys, I got you a bag of oranges. That's what you get to eat for the week." Well, he would go out and spend the rest of the money on gambling and losing 9 out of 10 times, right? Every now and again, he would win big and he'd be like, right? But even when he won big, he didn't give it back to his family. He went out with his friends and he celebrated with them, right? And so for him as a child growing up into an adult, in a lot of ways, it worked out really well for him, right? In a lot of ways, it was, I pushed myself because I will never be in that position again, right? And he became like an executive in a big company. Like it was a huge drive and motivational factor in him. With that being said, it was also a huge limiting thing because he was also very afraid, right? He was very afraid of losing it all, right? So the moment something kind of got like tricky, he would shut down. And then he would start to slide backwards. And then all of a sudden something would kick in and he'd be like, no, I'm getting too close to that. Let me get back up there. And he didn't want that slide anymore, right? And it was just working on him through like that feeling he had then to go, instead of being afraid, right, of that, it's, well, I'm grateful for that experience. And when he filled it with that gratitude of, yeah, he didn't like it, but he's thankful for it, that now when something gets tricky, he goes, man, that reminds me of that time where, yeah, we did struggle having to eat. But I am grateful for that moment because it allows me to stay level-headed and keep moving forward now. Right. Where before it was, well, I'm sliding backwards. Oh, no, I'm afraid. It's no, I'm thankful for it, right? As much he did have a lot of hatred towards his dad, rightfully so, right? His dad did not take care of him in any way, shape, or form. But now he looks at it and goes, you know what? My dad was flawed. He had a problem. I'm okay with him having a problem because I am a lot stronger now. And so it's not like he's filled with love and passion and be like, oh my God, I want my dad in my life. But he's learned to go, it's okay. I'll let that be because that was his problem, not mine. And for so many years, I made it my problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember after that session, right, he left going, I literally feel like a helium balloon, as if I'm floating physically. And he goes, I know I'm not floating. And he goes, I know that sounds crazy. He goes, but it's like a huge, like heavy feeling was finally gone. Yeah, and it was one where he came back like a week or two later. He was like, my wife this whole week is like, something's different. You've changed. Like your attitude, the way you talk, the way you hold yourself, the way you present yourself has changed. Like in a good way, you know. But that's the power of those memories, is the memories of his father didn't change. Like he can still go, oh yeah, my dad was a gambler. Oh yeah, my dad used to give us a bag of iron to go, that's your food for the week, right? He can still say those things, but versus coming from fear now, it comes from okayness and acceptance and even gratitude that he had him.
Yeah, it's a great description. It's really fascinating. I've even seen cartoons drawn, where they draw that, where there's one scene and one person, says one thing and one person says the other. It's so much his perception. And also, just through the brain, the science of the brain, as scientists have found, and the ophthalmologists, it's like we only perceive that which we can and what the brain sees as patterns. So there's actually way more happening than we can even see on a like scientific, just physical level of the way our body is constructed. So it makes perfect sense that it's also happening on a, kind of on a more, mental. I mean, there's like the physiological, and then there's this, what we're talking about. Of course, it would mirror.
Yeah. So this is a cool exercise that you can do, preferably with someone. You can do it yourself, but as to me a lot more fun and cooler when you do it with someone else. Because this is, to me, the physical representation of this whole experience, how people feel. If you take someone's hand, right? You take your hand and you push down and you tell them to push up, right? Do that for maybe 15, 20 seconds, right? Where full force, right? Then all of a sudden you just say, all right, 1, 2, 3, we're just going to stop pushing and resisting. Like 1, 2, 3, stop. And the arm will just naturally float up. Because to me, it's when we're putting so much pressure and fight onto these moments, it creates a physical drain and stress and just tiredness. And the moment we just stop, the lightness of everything just starts to rise. It's a very cool exercise where you just get to physically see what it does to your body when you stop fighting it, when it releases, right? Because your whole arm, like, and it's like we just let it. I say, don't push down, don't push up, just let it be there, and it will naturally rise. Some people will get a huge one where it'll go up straight like that. Some people just get a little one, but it will always rise. And again, it's a fun exercise, whether it's with kids or adults, right? But it really shows the power of what happens when a weight that's been on us for so long disappears.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to try it.
Yeah.
And hopefully anyone who's listening later might try it too and let us know.
Yeah.
So, well, let's stop there. I think that's a great place to stop. And we will next week talk about, who knows yet? Do you have an idea yet of, there's a few things that came up today that I'm pondering.
Yeah, I'm open to anything. One of the big things I say helps me at least is understanding everything in our life is a metaphor.
Okay, nice.
You know, and when we can understand the metaphors, it helps us understand our dreams better, but it also helps us change our life for the better.
I love that. Let's talk about that next week. That sounds perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you so much once again. And I'll end this for now, and we'll see everyone next week. Ciao.